Welcome to the Unapologetic Heroine podcast, where myth is made manifest. As the author of The Way of Inanna, a heroine's guide to living unapologetically, this podcast is based on Inanna, the Sumerian goddess of love and war who embodies multidimensionality and lives unapologetically true to her heart. We showcase the wisdom of individuals courageous enough to do the same. These are inspiring stories of what it takes to be authentically who you are. My guests honor the wisdom of love, embrace the polarities of being human, and walk their truth. I am your host, Shauna Zalazo, licensed psychotherapist, intuitive channel, and author of the book, The Way of Inanna. Thank you so much for tuning in. Welcome. This is going to be such a fun conversation. I get to speak with my friend Holly Finigan and share how, like Inanna, she is an unapologetic heroine, willing to embrace her growth and transformation, giving herself the permission to evolve and completely restructure her life to bring it into alignment with her heart. Holly is an entrepreneurial trailblazer whose foray as the first influencer on the beautiful island of Nantucket, Mass. Went viral. For years, she prioritized the fulfillment of others, establishing a business curating a luxurious resort experience on the magical island of Nantucket, as much a Hollywood destination as it is a presidential one, supporting and cultivating lasting experiences for others at the expense of herself. This led her to an emotional and physical heartbreak that began with the loss of her mother to cancer and then her own open heart surgery at age 34. In Holly's own words, she found how to stop living online for other people's hearts and started actually connecting offline with her own. This spiritual awakening is the subject of her first book, Wholeheartedly, The One You Want to Find Is You, her recently released memoir. With a degree in journalism, Holly began making her life on Nantucket, tending bar at the various island hotspots where she started blogging before blogging was a thing and cracked the social media code, adapting to it at its onset and cultivating a platform that enabled her to create the Nantucket Black Book, the island's first digital guide of where to sip, shop, and stay. If you wanted to know what was trending and where to find the real magic of the island, Holly had the answers. The writer, social media strategist, brand builder, and luxury lifestyle entrepreneur was thriving. Not simply was Holly on the scene, but she was creating the scene. All this came to a grinding halt when she went through a deep and profound descent into the underworld of her own. At the height of her Black Book success, Holly shut it all down. This is the story of how one woman turned her empire inward to become a highly sought-after healer, meditation teacher, and breathwork facilitator. Holly's mission has transformed from creating a luxurious travel experience into curating opportunities to help people heal themselves and experience the transformative alchemy of Nantucket. Welcome, Holly.
Oh my God. Well, we're done. You can just end that right there. Your brilliance shining through. I have never luckily this is a off-camera moment because there's major tears in my eyes. Thank you for that beautiful introduction and for seeing me in that light. Shauna, you're something else. Thank you.
Oh, I'm so excited to have you here. Holly, your own journey was very much like Inanna's in that you walked through the valley of grief into your own descent and ascent with a literal and figurative heart healing through open heart surgery. Can you tell us a little bit about your own heart transformation?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Thank you for that opportunity to start right from the heart. That's like where it all begins. And for me, being someone who really loves speaking from the heart and writing from the heart and connecting heart to heart, this is exactly the place to begin. So, if I'm going to be completely transparent from this podcast, from the moment we start, is that I've had a heart project going on since birth. And what I love to kind of chat with you especially about is that I was on my 6-month birthday, right? So 6 months out of the womb, when my parents found out that my sister had a connective tissue disorder called Marfan syndrome. She would have been 2 at the time. I was Christmas Eve of 1983, and I'm sure it wasn't a very merry one when they find out that their daughter has a heart problem, and then a heart condition that then they looked in and found within me. And for my whole life, I've known about this connective tissue disorder. I've known about this heart project, as I, thanks to my friend Sherry, like to use the word project instead of problem. I've been knowing that I'm going to have heart surgery my whole life. And I've just basically, for the first 30 plus years of my life, really just wouldn't talk to people that I had this condition. I didn't really want people to know that I had, quote, like anything wrong with me, and my mom, who was kind of my heart soul sister, who I believe is really a big part of not just my story and this book that I'm launching, but really a big, profound part of my reason of being here, and especially on this earth plane right now, was that my mom passed away right when I was 30. And that was really my first broken heart experience. And is it a broken heart or is it an awoken heart? It's two sides of the same coin. So as you beautifully, Shauna, after my heart surgery on January 8th, 2018, sent me an email. You said the symbolism is wild in your email. You said your own heart surgery is healing not just your heart project that was going on, but you're also healing your grief with the loss of your mother at the same time. So this double-edged moment of healing from the loss of my mother, and then healing my body, putting protective boundaries around my heart so that if I wanted to have kids one day, or if I just want to keep living a wholehearted life, I can do so with a really, beautifully healed and healing heart. And then also awakening me to the spiritual warrior that lives within me, because as soon as my heart surgery was done, in January 8th, 3 months later, I went to Bali on a healing journey where I met my teacher. His name is Punu Singh Wasu. And I started to do some really radical healing around healing the relationship with my parents, which was really the heart opening of all heart opening questions for me, Shauna, which is when my teacher looked at me as I was getting a chakra healing crystal sound bath, whatever it was, right? Like something that sounded so beautifully profound in the spiritual world at the yoga barn in Bali. I couldn't wait to have. But before I got down on the table to have this healing, my teacher asked me this question. He said, "How are you?" I said, I'm a 10. I'm perfect. I'm on a heart healing journey. I'm never felt better in my life. I'm awake. I'm alert. I'm here. I'm in Bali. I'm great. He said, "Okay, that's great. How is your relationship with your parents?" And I was like, "What?" And I was like, not good. I don't know. I don't know if they really knew each other, loved each other. They divorced before I even knew really them together. And then I started bawling. And I was like, oh, here I am, that fraud, telling somebody you're a 10 when innerly I was probably a 2, needing to start back at that sacral chakra and really heal the relationship with my parents. So that became part of this heart-opening journey of healing the relationship with my mother, especially, so that I could heal the relationship with myself, especially.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I really appreciate the experience, because articulating that you're a 10 and then realizing you're more at a 2. It's this experience that we have when we allow ourselves to be vulnerable, and the truth just comes right out in that way. And it sounds like you were in the absolutely perfect setting for that to occur, and in really beautiful, supportive hands for you to begin to really allow yourself to be vulnerable.
Totally.
So powerful. And I find it quite symbolic and interesting that you were, let's say, the heart project that you were experiencing was around a connective tissue disorder, because anyone who knows you, Holly, knows that you are absolutely masterful at connecting others and supporting and uplifting others. And so I'm curious about how this connective tissue disorder was a teacher for you about what is true inter and inner connection and what that's really about.
Yeah. Thanks for that, because that is so true, right? Like I remember I started the Nantucket Black Book that you had mentioned in the intro, this kind of online guide to Nantucket, because a bartender friend of mine, because before I worked in this spirit world, I worked in the spirits world for a long time on Nantucket and bartended for 9 years. And one of the friends that I bartended with, one night was telling me at this hotspot Lola that we worked at downtown on the, chic island of Nantucket, but this was like wintertime, and Nantucket in January is very different than Nantucket in July. And in January, she looked over at me one night and she goes, "Wow, you're really good at connecting people." And I just remember sitting with that afterwards, kind of realizing that being a bartender was like connecting people to spirit. What do you want? Grey Goose martini straight up with an olive, a margarita spicy with salt, Hefeweizen beer, whatever it was, these spirits. But I was serving people the wrong spirit. I was kind of like unaligned with what I was really trying to connect people to, because I realized while I was connecting people online to this beautiful, glamorous, luxurious lifestyle that is Nantucket Island, innerly, what I was completely disconnected from myself was who I am and why am I here? Because everything I was doing was to help, as you had just said, uplift and connect my community. But in turn, I could do it for everybody else, but not for me. And my heart surgery became the symbolism of trying to go within to figure out how to connect my own dots and connect my own story and start telling my own story, because telling other people's stories was too easy for me. Telling my own story, man, that's the work. So.
Oh, and absolutely. And you have done it so beautifully. I'm so excited to share your book, Wholeheartedly. The one you want to find is you, because you do that. You allow yourself to be so vulnerable, and it comes through in such a transformative way for the reader. You cultivate a safe and sacred space in your book for readers to enter the complex and challenging material in beautiful, concise, and digestible bites. As I read the sections, it felt like you were taking us through a meditation wherein we paused to integrate the magnitude of the progressive process at each stage. How does the way the book is constructed support the integration of the material?
Oh, beautiful. Thank you for that one. Because these are these moments. Again, one of the reasons why I'm such a huge fan of yours, Shauna, is the way that you connect dots. So thank you. So with that, in connecting this story, I consider the book 21 guideposts that lead to an awakening, which is chapter 22. So these guideposts that are these 21 chapters take the reader on a journey of a treasure hunt to self. And the idea is that in between each chapter, there is a question of self-reflection that helps you get into the next chapter. So if we start with the dreamer, right? And we start with the dreamer, we end with the awakening, right? So the dreamer, at the end of the dreamer, I say the question, what happened to me? Well, that's quite the tale. So let's begin again where we all do. And then at the end of that, there's a little photo of these little two sleeping birds. And it says, where do we all begin? 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 And that idea of where do we all begin? Well, you flip the page and you see the two sleeping birds, and underneath it, it says the parents. So each time I take the journey into the diving deeper and deeper and deeper into the, spiritual awakening that's happening, I have a moment of self-reflection for the reader to really assess where they're at on their own journey, because I'm going through some heavy stuff in this book, and it's not luxuriously beautiful. It's not dinner at Lola and staying at the White Elephant Suites and waking up and having, breakfast at Island Kitchen. It's not like that. It's going into a lot of shadow work. But to do that, I really think that you can make the shadow work lighter. And you do that by entering it at a way that's accessible and also really universal. So I really enjoy the way that the book flowed out. Honestly, Shauna, it took me 10 years literally to write this book. When you and I first connected in November 7th of 2017, and why I know the exact date is because you were my first voice recording on my phone while you were here on the island of Nantucket, being such an incredible healer and connector and Akashic record reader that you are. And one of the things that I love through your channel with that one is I told you I was writing a book about social media and basically how to heal my relationship with the internet, not knowing at all that it was going to take me another 5 years to write that story to get back to chapter 21, which is my internet, coming back into my connective tissue, connecting my own tissue into my own heart, connecting to my own internet so that I can use the internet as an amazing tool for raising consciousness and not eroding myself in the process.
And you have succeeded in doing that so beautifully. And it reads like you are a meditation teacher, like you are in that way, because the way that it's laid out is truly supportive of integrating the information. And what I love is bringing the shadow into the light, the way you're describing. And it makes it, I want to say, easier for us to lean into exploring those aspects of ourselves when it's laid out in an inviting way like this. And it's so beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you. I also will say, one of the ways that we begin a story, you and I were talking about this in your beautiful book, and the way in which the being very vulnerable with people from the beginning, sharing in the way of Inanna of, your own mother's passings and your own trauma shadow at 19 that was following you all around. For me, we were both 19 when a lot of this stuff was happening for us. Our mother's passings, your mother actually passing over when you were 19. Me, my mother telling me that she had connective tissue cancer. Basically, it's called leiomyosarcoma, the cancer that my mother had, which would then follow her for 12 more years after that. So at 19, we, one of the things I also love about the connectiveness of you and I is that we're super into heart work. Of course, that's really, where it starts, but getting into goddess work and getting into the sacral chakra work is super important to me. And I really like to look at the chakras as happening in 18-year cycles. I like to think that every 18 years we get to start back at the root again. And, when I was telling you that at 6 months, I was found that I was going to, find out that I had something wrong with my heart, like my sister did on my 6-month birthday. The sacral chakra formed in the body between the ages of 6 months and 2 years. I was just going into my sacral when something was told to me that was not right with my heart. So then I like thinking if you start again at 18 years, and let's say at, 18 and 6 months until 20, you're in your sacral again. Well, you and I were both in our sacral when our mothers either passed or had this kind of, cancers or things come into them. So really this exchange in the universe giving us into our sacral time and understanding what our sacrals can really do for us is fascinating to me. And I'm so excited with what your book is doing for the sacral, as that, as I told you, is really what I'm working on with my next book. And the next project is really around opening that sacral energy. It's where for women, it's everything for women right now.
Oh, I can't wait for your second book. And I really appreciate that explanation about the 18-year cycle. And that really resonates with me. Such a powerful experience and also hard, right? But also created an opportunity for healing in both of us. So many blessings to the opportunities that were created through that experience to transform and to heal and to reclaim power, right?
I love that.
Words have been so important to you as a writer. And you play with the body as language, even in the cover art of your book, which includes an anatomical image of the human heart. The body obviously speaks to you. How did you develop your own fluency with the language of the body, Holly?
Yeah. Oh, cool. I am, when I think about who I really am, I am a writer. That is who I am. It's what I've always been. I've been running away from it my whole life, even though I know that it is what I was put here to do, was to write and to focus on words. And what's so interesting is the way that my book is laid out, Shauna, is that there are 3 sections, well, 4 if you can include the, fourth section, but I'm going to start with the first 3 sections. Okay. Finnegan's existence, part 1, Ruth's consciousness, part 2, and Holly's bliss, part 3. Each one of those chapters, okay, it has like an arc of 3. So there are 3 in each one. Let's say like chapter 1 is also connected to chapter 8, which is also connected to chapter 15, chapter 2, chapter 9, chapter 16, the whole thing. But if you go to chapter 4, okay, chapter 4 is the words, chapter 11 is the heart, and chapter 18 is wholeheartedly. So to me, the words that are coming out of my heart wholeheartedly are the real gift of this book. And why I know this is that really when I look at that connection, the words, the heart, and wholeheartedly's image is the heart chakra. The heart image for chapter 11 is the actual heart. And then the words is a typewriter. You'll see that. And those three things really connected is really why I know my heart is here to express through words. And knowing that, now knowing that that is like how my heart works is through my actual typing through my fingers, I now know how to channel that superpower, because they say that the hands are the extension of the heart, right? So those, what I'm writing through, my hands is really my heart's work. And I see that with everybody who's creative. And everyone is creative, but someone whose hands express through cooking, like a chef, right? That's their heart at work. Or somebody whose hands express through painting, like Madeline Hay, who I know is on your show, who we know here from Nantucket, how hers is through her artwork and her painting and her visuals. And even, somebody, let's say Punu, my teacher, he's a grandmaster Reiki healer. So his hands are used for healing in that sense. So really understanding the hands and the heart as a big connection together is something that has helped me empower this book, as understanding what we do with our hands in our life here is a major reason why we are here.
I love that so much. And I love the correlation between your relationship to body and Inanna's relationship to body. Both of you insist on that connection and recognize that it's in service of us, that it's not something to be moved, that we're not trying to come out of the body or transcend the physical, but to experience that which is transcendent while in the physical. Your book really highlights that so beautifully.
Thank you. And same with yours, like when I kind of look at like the way in which that the chakras are so beautifully unpacked in your 7 chapters as well. Like one of the things that I love the most is that using your words to end on the sacral chakra, right? Knowing that that's part of your gift, and Inanna's gift is really getting women back through the words, through reading, and through the connection through the sacral. And the sacral and the heart, as you and I were discussing, they're very interconnected, which is why I'm so excited that we get to even further our friendship and kinship and sisterhood together to do an event together in Heart Month in February. So this is, really divinely timed.
Absolutely. I am so excited about that. And in your book, like Inanna, you identify that you had to activate the warrior aspect of yourself to access self-love. What was this process like for you?
Yeah, that's when the 2 big questions show up, right? Who am I and why am I here? Those are the last 2 questions that show up before the warrior chapter begins. Because once you ask yourself those questions, and for me, I didn't ask myself those questions. I wrote those 2 sentences down after my heart surgery. And as soon as I looked at those questions, I was like, oh no. Those are the big ones. Like, they're not like asking me like, what do I have to do tomorrow? And have I picked up my dry cleaning? Like, no, it was, who am I and why am I here? And those 2 questions activated for me, the warrior within me, to start looking into all the ways of who I am not, because I had to unpack a lot of that. I had built up this brand online and this personality and this person who I thought I was online. And then I had to literally in the craziest way, she had to die. She had to literally go away. But it wasn't that easy because I had built a whole livelihood around this idea of being Miss Black Book and the whole Black Book Nantucket theme. And what would happen for me is I would go to Bali and I would be like, oh my God, I'm Holly Bali. That's who I am. I'm Holly Bali, and that's my new Instagram name. And screw this Nantucket Black Book stuff. I'm out of there. And then I had a crazy dream when I was in Bali because I had decided I was going to move there. And I was like, I'm going to, be a digital nomad here. I'll help people with strategy and Instagram and whatever, I'm just going to live in Bali. And in the book, under chapter 17, To See is to Be Free, you'll read Finnegan's Wake. And it is when I literally was transported in a dream back to Nantucket, and literally all that was screaming, I was screaming at everyone, wake up, wake up, wake up. And I woke up and I knew exactly what was happening. And they're like, you know what? You want to live in La La Land? You want to, be Holly Bali? That's not why we put you here. We put you here to be Nantucket Black Book. And then we put you here so that you can actually go back and be Holly Ruth Finigan. So figure it out or don't and relive this whole life again some other way.
And wow, does that invite in the spiritual warrior to come into a place to dissolve that cognitive dissonance that might have been present and arrive, come back, wake up fully.
Wake up. Totally.
Wow. I so appreciate that. Forgiveness is also central to your book. What do you hope readers get from your own journey with forgiveness?
Totally. So, chapter 18, Wholeheartedly, really goes into the Ho'oponopono Hawaiian forgiveness meditation. I am sorry. Please forgive me. I love you. Thank you. Right? Forgiveness is everything when it comes to leading a wholehearted life and moving forward, in my opinion. And I believe that if we cannot get through that forgiveness, then we cannot get down to the root of what's really going on, which is really forgiving ourselves for something self-betrayal that is actually our own thing to own. But we usually have to seemingly forgive someone else to get to the point of forgiving ourselves. So my story has a lot to do with my mother and some not pretty things that happened in our childhood that I definitely believe was a lot of the cancer that followed my mother around for 12 years. And, I begin the book with my mom's last words. And the last thing she ever said to me was, "Did you write something? Don't worry, you will." And I always thought it was about writing, with my hands, WRITE. But the real story is that I had to, alongside my sisters, we had to write RIGHT something because our mother had left us with a pretty toxic torch of trauma that would have continued to get passed down to the next generation. And I refused, as I know my sisters did as well, to make that our story for the next generation of children coming into our family, into this world, the whole world as a family reading this as well.
Oh, and we see that spiritual warrior again in that capacity to not only forgive, but also to right what was up to be balanced. Mm-hmm. Oh, wow. And certainly, as you're articulating, your connection to your mother continues to be pivotal in your journey, as it was in your book. And I'm certain that you feel her pride now with the release of your book. What would you want to tell your mother today?
Oh my God, I want to tell her this whole book. The whole thing is that I write letters to my mother throughout the book, and those letters are the ones that I wish I could mail out to her. And anyone who has followed me on social media knows that I have spent a lot of my time, my mother's birthday, Mother's Day, my day of my mother's passing. I spend a lot of time writing letters to her of things that I wish that she knew, things that I wish that she knew while she was physically in this earth's plane. But now we get to my mother, my name is Holly Ruth. My mother's name is Ruth. Together as Holly Ruth, we get to tell this story in a totally new way together through her side, as you and I have definitely connected with, that my mom is very much channeled in through me. And we wrote this story together. I fully believe that, there was something that I needed to do for her and that she needed to do for me. And in turn, this book is the gift that Holly and Ruth are giving out as Holly Ruth Finigan. And my father, by the way, my dad had the same heart surgery that my sister and I had this past August. And it's been amazing because now my father has been on his own healing journey and calling me up. One of his friends is going through a little bit of a hard moment right now. And so he's asking me to lead a Zoom online meditation prayer healing circle for his friend. And here's my 66-year-old father, creating these little meditation groups for his guy friends now through me. So my father is also a huge part of this. And writing this book, Shauna, writing this book, I had to basically give my dad my diary, right? So it's like, if you think of that moment of all the things you never told your parents, that's what I had to do. And I had to give my dad my diary and then be like, this is going out to the world, but I think you should know these stories before everybody does. So we went through, anytime he was mentioned in the book, I had a whole meeting with him to go over it. So he knows how much, even though I had such pain with our relationship and abandonment issues and feeling of not being good enough in our relationship early on, he was the one alongside my amazing stepmother, Mother Teresa, as I call him. The two of them were who helped me heal from heart surgery. So even though my father may not have been there for me as much in my childhood, as an adult, when I was really going through an incredible moment of growth and healing, my father was right there by my side just when I needed him. So I'll be forever grateful for that.
Wow, what a huge gift to access that. And I totally relate to that piece around having your father sort of read your diary, because there was a piece around my own work that I had to share, and it was hard for him to read. So, about my own personal story, my own personal experience, I hadn't really shared with him. And so I really appreciate that you just spoke about that and addressed that. And I really love the way that the experience of forgiveness, it unlocks things, it opens things, it releases us from the resentment. When we dissolve resentment, it releases us from the trauma of the past, and it starts to show up in all of these different ways, even if we never overtly express it, meaning like even if we do it in a subtle way, just privately within ourselves, it's transformative. And you can really see that in what has occurred within your own family system. So powerful.
Thank you.
Yeah. The mythology of Inanna invites us to prioritize our own healing, emphasizing the purification of the chakras as integral to the ascension process. Your own grief, as well as your open heart surgery, activated the healer archetype in you. And now you too work directly with the chakras through what you call mapping sessions. Can you tell us about your heart mapping sessions as a healing modality and what a session might entail?
Totally. So chakra mapping, as I call it, which you can find it out on my website more if people are interested in this. It's a way of having a life review to find out where trauma might still be living in the body. And then in turn, wherever those traumas happen, we can then identify them with where you're at in your chakras at that time. So let's say, as you very well know, my parents divorced when I was 4 to 5. So I was in my heart chakra from 4 to 7. And during that time, my parents divorced and we moved away from my dad. So there was a deep-seated need of my father and abandonment during that time. So I lived with a very closed-off heart. But the cool thing about doing these chakra mappings is that I started to recognize that, like I said, the 18-year cycles, you're in your heart chakra, as I believe, between 4 and 7, 22 and 25, 40 and 43, 58 and 61, whatever. We can keep going up from there, but let's start there. Okay. So right now I'm about to be 40. So I'm about to go back into my heart chakra. And how I look at that is it's a beautiful full circle moment of healing for the abandonment of my father back at the age of 4 to at 40, writing the story and loving the connection that I have with him because of knowing both sides of feeling connected to him and disconnected with him. So in chakra mapping, like let's say, Shauna, how old are you right now?
46.
So from 44 to 48, you're in your throat, right? So your truth. Mm-hmm. Here we go. What was going on in your life between the ages of 8 and 12? And then again from 26 to 30. And then now from 44 to 48. How are we looking at like those times in your life? Were you speaking your truth? Were you speaking things into existence? Were you told to keep secrets at any of those ages? Did you keep secrets at any of those ages? Were you connected to any sort of lies and miscommunications during those times? And for me, for my throat chakra at the age of 9 is when I was told to keep a secret. So here I am developing my throat chakra between 8 and 12. And at 9, I'm told to keep a secret. And I'm like, great, I can do that for you. I can close this whole thing down. We don't have to worry about that ever. So there I was, became very good at keeping secrets and containing my feelings from the age 9 on. So what was fascinating was I'm back in my throat chakra, like I told you, from 26 to 30. And I have a sexual trauma happen to me at 29. And I'm 9 years old, basically, because I don't know how to speak on sexual trauma. So in turn, with this moment, and it's something I really admire in you and your work, is at the age of 44 to now even 48, you're putting out this work in this world, this truth, truly how you see it. And then in turn, speaking on it through this podcast or whatever other ways that you're doing it. But this great chakra mapping way to kind of look at when you were disconnected from your throat and when you're connected to it. And the great thing with chakra mapping is it's a beautiful way to look at the warrior within. When I did my first chakra mapping and I looked at myself from 1983 to 2020, the image is fascinating, but I was like, damn, wow, that is one badass life. that was cool. Like what the stuff that I went through, the things I overcame, the ways in which that I stuck up for myself, what I created, my independence, losing my mom, sexual trauma, going through, my own real heart surgery and heart openings, like really cool things. And doing this work really just made me love myself, right? Because that's the whole goal, right? Through understanding, through like a goddess like Inanna, how to love herself, that Shauna and Holly can then also do that through understanding how to stop apologizing for your life and loving your life and loving all the things that were good, bad, shadow, dark, light, ugly, pretty, whatever it is. They're all the same if you just love them all for what they are.
Oh, absolutely. Amen. Absolutely. And I love that your own journey invites us to reframe our own experiences and see where we are as your experience, as you experienced yourself as such a powerful being when you reflected back on that. So I love that the healing sessions that you do can bring us to a place of empowerment. And that's so Holly, because you're definitely someone who is entirely connected to empowering others. And it's such a beautiful approach to bring to people. I'm excited for folks to experience that kind of work. And you have just always been ahead of the curve, as you are in this way with this modality, but also in your understanding of social media and tapping into sort of in general where things are going. How do you see social media shifting at this time?
Yeah, it's fascinating. The chapter 7 of my book is called The Internet, right? And chapter 21 is called The Internet. Okay. So I remember how I told you that all three of these, there's like arcs of 3 chapters, right? So chapter 7, the internet, chapter 14, the knowing, chapter 21, the internet. What I know is this: the internet is an incredible tool, like a hammer, right? You get to put up pictures with it, right? Hammers have been great tools for us throughout the ages. But that's a hammer, and a hammer is also dangerous. And if we don't recognize, if we're not using that tool in the proper resource, in the proper way to put up pictures to help us remember our life and scrapbook in a new way, versus put up photos to feel like we're enough to get other people's likes and hearts and all that kind of stuff, it can start to really erode the sense of self. And it did that for me for a long time. So I know truly, like I know through gnosis, I understand how the internet can be used in a harmful way to erode the self. And in turn, I also deeply know how the internet is now used in a completely different way, in a connective way, to up-level the consciousness in a really, really fast way. That's what the Earth's plane is asking for, a very large shift in consciousness in the quickest timeline as possible. So they gave us this revolution called the internet. And that internet is incredible. It's an incredible tool. Let's remind ourselves, though, it is a tool. It is outside of ourselves. If you look at any of the images in my book, the internet is the weakest image. Why? Because it's all outside of us. It has nothing to do with what's inside of us. So the internet getting us back into, this tool, the internet coming back into this place of knowing from the inside out, connecting yourself, your connective tissue, right? Connecting all your connective tissue. That is where we're going. And if we can understand that as a connected being, to use the internet as the tool that it can be to up-level consciousness, we will skyrocket off this place so fast. The awakening will happen in such astronomical shifts will begin that, we'll be able to really take this to new heights. But what we're also realizing is that that's not going to happen through the patriarchal system of how it's been placed, because the real issue at hand, and I know I'm going a little over with this, so I really believe that this is an important thing to note, though, is that there was no female-seated consciousness levels on any of the internet platforms that we as users, especially women, use today. Facebook, Instagram, Google, MailChimp, Pinterest, you name it, no female-seated founders on those. So the issue with that is that we're using this internet as a tool with no understanding of how it's eroding the sense of self for women. So the most important thing for us to do is to start to recognize that the internet is led by the matriarchy, while the internet has been led by the patriarchy, and they have to come into a harmonizing balance of the internet and the internet. And if we don't get to that place and we keep using it as a tool to shift powers and polarize our people and put the whole duality back into 2022, like we can't do that anymore. we have to start recognizing how to balance our internet and our internet. And we're going to do that through the uprising of the matriarchy and the understanding that the patriarchy is not going away, it's coming into balance.
Oh, yes. The balance. Absolutely. And I love that perspective so much. And I think it's a really important conversation to have because many of us have, maybe we might say ambivalent relationships with social media. And so I really appreciate the perspective of that balance between the inner and the internet. Very beautiful. I am mindful that we're running out of time, but I know that you have been the island's influencer from the inception of really that term. And I wondered if you had any advice that you might want to give young influencers who are just making their way into this type of career so that they can do their work in a way that protects their own heart as well as the hearts of others.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for ending with that, because I think that is the perfect way to segue this to the word influencer needs to go away. It is a word that needs to be replaced. It needs to be a word that really stops being part of mainstream conversation, especially in the world of marketing, because what it says is that someone influences people and someone doesn't influence people, and everyone is an influencer in their own rights. Some of my best influencers or people of influence have no social media and no following, and yet they are completely followed and beloved. There's someone out there, I don't know if anyone's heard of him. His name is Jesus. He never had an Instagram account, and he was a great influence. So if you want to talk about this, we need to get out of that word influencer and start having people understand the word advocate. If you're an advocate for something, right? You're sticking up for something, you're believing in something, then believe in it. Be an advocate for something. And if you want to be out there in the world advocating for people, great, do that all that you can. If you've got an awesome cacao that you love and you want to tell everybody how great it is, and you've got a 10% off code, and that's what you want to tell people, advocate for that cacao, but you don't influence for that. Unfortunately, that word influencer has really, 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 really traumatized the culture of social media, and it needs to go away. So that's all I ask.
I love that, advocate. Absolutely. And finally, Holly, you and I both know that Nantucket is a very special place and that there is something about the island that invites transformation. If you're ready to experience it, my own time on Nantucket was a significant part of my initiatory process. What is it about Nantucket that has drawn so many gifted healers like the super talented dear friend of ours, Monika Rudnicka of Monarch Nantucket, where you conduct your own sessions, as well as the countless extraordinary transformative artists of all modalities to reside on the island?
Yeah, so Nantucket translates to place of peace, right? Faraway land. It's an island that has been known for centuries as a place where women ran it, right? While the men went out and came back like the tides. They were always, the whaling capital of the world. But we're seeing, though, that Nantucket, being the whaling capital of the world, is now shifting in its known knowledge, let's say, out there as being a healing capital of the world, the place of peace that it was from the get-go. So this beautiful island that is known as the Gray Lady, it's a woman, it's a womb, it rocks people back to life. There was a healer on the island who said that to me. Nantucket is a womb, the Gray Lady rocks us back to life. To me, I lived here on Nantucket. This will be my 18th year, right? So there I am in that nice little 18-year cycle. And this island became my mother, and she rebirthed me.
I love that. I fully agree with the Gray Lady having that maternal capacity. And it's so inspiring the ways in which she has helped you come in fully to your heart. Thank you so much for your time and for sharing your beautiful journey into your own heart. Please tell us how we can find you, work with you, and get your inspiring book, Wholeheartedly. The one you want to find is you. And I'll be sure to put it in the show notes as well.
Well, thank you so much. I actually decided that I just wanted to move forward with this book and didn't want to wait for somebody to tell me that it was ready for publishing. So I'm self-published and it's on Etsy. So you can find it on Etsy and with the show link as well. You can also find me on that great tool, the internet, on something called Instagram. I don't know if anyone's heard of it. My name is Holly Ruth Finigan on that. And if you want to, my favorite way to connect with people is letters. So you don't need to write me necessarily one for the post office, but feel free to reach out at hollyruthfinigan.com. You can find it on my website. Talks about chakra mapping, talks about the book, talks about meditations, and talks about being part of this beautiful council of light that I feel very aligned with you, Shauna, on. So thank you for letting me be this light worker on your show.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us. And to our listeners, may you experience fulfillment on every level with great ease and joy. Thank you. Thank you so much for listening to the Unapologetic Heroine podcast, featuring remarkable individuals living their truth. For more wisdom on how to support your own journey toward honoring your heart and courageously alchemizing our world through the power of love, pick up my book, The Way of Inanna, A Heroine's Guide to Living Unapologetically, at booksellers worldwide.